Awesome. Well, welcome to Connect and Create. We are at episode 30, and I'm Karina Sephora, and I'm super happy to be here with you, all of you in our audience out there in the world, and especially, do I pronounce your name properly, Sabre?
Well, that's the European exotic way, but I just go with the American Sabre.
Sabre. Meaning to ask you that.
But I'll take both. I'll take both.
We'll do ours extra and get super European, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So we have Sabre here today with us on Connect and Create. And before we get into our show, I want to tell you a little bit about how Connect and Create began. And then I'm going to share a little about our fabulous guest. So this year during the pandemic, I think of myself as a social hermit. I spent a lot of time in my studio working. And then there are those great times that you're out and about at art openings and lectures and events and parties and dinners and, all the fun stuff. And so when we weren't doing all of that, I found myself with a lot of extra time and I felt disconnected from people. And I wanted to be able to be connected. And I also, I wanted to be able to create opportunities for other people to share who they are. I love going to artist talks. And I think of artists as entrepreneurs. And so this show, Connect and Create, was really born out of the desire to have a space to connect and create with other people. Mm-hmm. And that's really how it came about. And we are at episode 30. And originally I ran it 3 days a week, but as things picked back up again with my studio practice, I pared it down to 1 day a week. And so that's a little bit about how the Connect and Create came to be. And as I mentioned, we're here at episode 30. Anything you'd like to say to be present today, Sabre, before I give share a little from your bio?
I'm just excited to be a part of it, number one. And number two, in doing this, I've watched a few of them, and it's been really fascinating to listen to other artists talk about their work. And like you said, to connect. And I think that is something that, even though, like you're right, we spend a lot of time in our studio, I think artists generally want to connect with people, either visually through their work, but like you said, all the artist talk and other things that we do, that's when I really feel that symbiotic thing of what it's like to be a creative person. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to learning more about you. We have a lot of mutual friends and we are out and about, but this will give us an opportunity to, get to know each other better. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know your work also better, as well as you. And I'm going to share a little bit, hope that came out right, but I'm looking forward to both parts.
Yes. Thank you.
So I'm going to share a little bit about, your history of who you are as an artist. And Sabre Esler is an Atlanta-based artist, and she's a multidisciplined artist and creates works and environments that are fueled by her interest in human behavior. That's great. And her latest body of work is inspired by the book Thinking Fast and Slow, which compares all the capacity of the mind and the lens of behavioral economics. Oh, okay, great. Mm-hmm. Esler is an Ohio native, and she graduated from Miami University, Oxford, Ohio, with a BFA in graphic design, illustration, and a minor in biology. And she's also continued her art career first in advertising and design, and began a fine art career after leaving the corporate world. And which is a lot of why I think that artists are really entrepreneurs, right? There's how many people do you know of that have turned into life coaches or, right? They started out in corporate and they're like, I have some other calling, right? That goes that way oftentimes for artists as well, to go out on your own. So she, let's see, where else did you have a lot of credits from school. She received her MFA in painting from Savannah College of Art and Design, otherwise known as SCAD, in 2015. And she taught foundation studies at SCAD at the Atlanta campus. So did you go to school in the Savannah campus or the Atlanta campus?
Atlanta.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. And I taught there for a little while, actually. Mm-hmm. Around 2012, 13, right in that time.
Okay, I was up on the 5th floor.
Okay, come on, awesome. So what else? So she teaches at Georgia Perimeter on the Dunwoody campus, GSU, and I did my master's at Georgia State. See, we're connected.
Great. Yes. Yes.
So it's 2 degrees of separation, right?
Right. I know. That's what I was thinking. Is that I'm sure we know a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So she's had solo shows in Boston, Charleston, Knoxville, and Atlanta. We're in Boston, just out of curiosity.
Gosh, it was so long ago. That was like in 2001. It's called South of Market, I think, in that area. It's like some lofts.
I lived in Boston for 5 years. 5 of the happiest years of my life, actually.
Oh, great. Well, I had a gallery represent me for close to 20 years.
Oh wow!
For Boston, sold most of my work, and she was working in New York, so she had a lot of contacts between New York and Connecticut and Boston and all that. So she does a good bit of selling.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations. Let's see, what else can we say? Let's see, Atlanta, Boston, Knoxville. Her work has been exhibited at Art Basel the last 3 years, and she's a Hambidge Fellow.
Yes.
To date, she has completed 4 installations in the Atlanta area, taking her sculptures to room-size works. Wow, cool, can't wait to see those. And her work can also be found in the public collections of Miami University, Tufts University, the Federal Reserve Bank, Fulton County Arts Council, the City of Atlanta and corporate collections of the Ritz-Carlton, Cognia, Acoustic, Trammell Crow, SunTrust Bank, Hyatt Hotels, Oglethorpe Bank, Preferred Office, Georgian Bank, Atlanta Capital Bank, Waycross Bank and Trust, Boardwalk Inn at Wild Dunes, Hilton Hotels, Shell, Bray, Aycock, Able, and Livingston. Whew, that was a mouthful. And Crowell and Mooring, Advantage Executive Offices. And let's see, what else? Reaction 35, the Lofts at Capitol Quarters, Hilton Hotels, and Cognia, as well as over 500 private collections. Wow. You were serious when you said you had your work in a lot of corporate collections. That's wonderful, right? I was just this morning, went to see my skin doctor, and I was noticing all of these blank walls, and I was thinking, I need an art consultant or someone, they need something on these long tan walls in these 6th floor. I was on the 6th floor of this medical building. At any rate, yeah, great job on sparkling up those places.
Yes, yeah. Thanks.
Anything, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is I just received a grant from the Fulton County Council for the Arts in support of this show. So I'm excited. I'm going to extend it. I started in March and I'm going to continue till March. I mean, they don't ask us to do that much for the grant, but I thought, why not go an entire year, see how it goes, see what we create, fill up the archive, and we'll assess again from there.
Okay, great. Well, so I was interested after hearing some of the other people speak about their work, about what is the creative process. And, I often say sometimes I feel like I move the goalpost a little bit. What is success? What does it look like as an artist? And there's so many different varied ways that we actually create, and we create our life path. And I think that that's something that's interesting to talk about because, we have 2 things that we're doing as entrepreneurs. We're being business people, but we're also using ourselves as the creative product. And so trying to blend that a lot of times can be very complicated as to like I said, what is success? Is it monetary? Is it, a piece that you really love? What is that? Because it can be confusing, I think, a lot of times. And also, if you don't feel like you're getting an audience, it can be a little bit lonely. So, that's why this is great right now, is they have the chance to be able to connect even virtually is a really good thing, because what we do a lot of times is very isolating. So.
Definitely. Okay, great. Well, I know you have some images you'd like to share with us. Would you like to start sharing those now?
Yeah, let's see if I can do that successfully the first time. Let's see if I do it there. Okay, so now, oops, wait a minute. Can you see what I'm seeing, or do I need to share the screen?
Share the screen.
Okay, let me go down here.
That little green.
Share screen. Oop. Okay, wait a minute now. We did it so well the first time.
Yep, you're great. And then you just want to go to slideshow.
There we go. Didn't take too long. Okay, so I made a little presentation. It's a chronological view of how I started in one place and ended up in a completely different place. I think that most young people, when they go into undergrad, you know, boldly brave in this idea of being a creative person, we don't really know what that path's going to look like. So this first image is something I currently did, but I didn't really start there. I started here. And so coming out of illustration, graphic design, and a biology degree, I thought I was going to be a medical illustrator until I took a hard look at what does that mean that I'm going to be doing every day, and very quickly put the brakes on, realizing that's not me at all. I wanted a much more fun environment, and that was very technical. So I went into graphic design, corporate advertising, things like that. Did it for about 10 years and realized, wow, I'm really a function of marketing. I'm not being very creative, and I really don't want to do that. But I don't know what a fine art career looks like. I don't know anything about it. So the first thing I decided to do was try an art fair in Roswell, Triangle on the Square, in like 1996, 97. And a designer came up to me and said, you know, you should try being in a gallery. So I thought, all right, I'll try being in a gallery. Let's see what that looks like. So I went and looked around and realized I really don't even know how to put a portfolio together, or what does that do. It took me about 6 months, but I got into a co-op gallery. I don't know if you're familiar with this place called Heaven Blue Rose. It's up on the Triangle area. It's a co-op, which means that you get a chance to sit in the chair in the front area and basically sell other people's work as well as your own. Which is great, because you get to see what does it look like when people are actually looking at artwork, and how do you talk about it. And I got to know a lot of the artists there, and they were very generous in teaching me how to document my work and all the other business side of what does it look like to be a fine art person, which I didn't know anything. So I'm going to show you next. This is the images that I was making. So I got in Heaven Blue Rose in 1997. So these are images 4 years apart, but by 2006, the impressionistic way that I was working was beginning to fall apart. And the work that I had been selling, which was very impressionistic, is how people were describing it. I was thinking, I'm not an impressionist. I'm like metaphysical. I mean, why am I making work that's not really doing what I think I'm doing? And I kind of felt a little bit like I was not being authentic, or in a fraud kind of way, of like when people would say, I love your work, you're so impressionistic. And I'm like, why are people thinking I'm impressionistic? So, you know, I'm thinking about mind, body, spirit. And so the one on the right is when it started to be, you know, even though I was doing figurative work and I could do very technical work, that it was becoming not so technical anymore. And I remember when I watched yours, you were talking about boats. And so I was doing a series on boats. I sold a lot of boat paintings. People love boats. And so you have this thing as an artist of waffling between making work that commodifies how you see a boat or how you see something and people buy it, but then also feeding this inner creative core that we have of why are we making things. And I think that as artists, a lot of times we struggle with that, of like that whole idea of selling out. Have you ever talked to people about this, of like, you know, is it a bad thing to be selling? Is it a good thing to be selling? I mean, you kind of feel like, yay, I'm selling, but you know, the work I really want to make is the work I make for myself. So I kind of was dealing with that at the same time. And now the landscapes that I was making are becoming basically these swashes of color, and not so much, you know, with the little windows and doors of buildings anymore, that they're looking like this. But still love the boat idea, but in a lot of ways, if you cover up that boat, you'll see that in my future work, they look a lot like this. So this dark night of the soul of what am I doing? And actually 2010, that's when the bubble had fully burst and people realized they weren't really buying artwork anymore. And so I had this cathartic moment of like, okay, so if it's not really about selling work anymore, what am I going to do with myself? So I went to the Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia and tried plein air painting. I loved the professor, but thought I need more. I want to discover myself. And so in 2012, I went to graduate school at SCAD. I learned very quickly that I don't understand art speak when in graduate school. 2012 was a really tough time because most of the work, which I'm not going to even show any of it, was so bad that I really didn't know what I was doing, because I was still waffling between being a painter and trying to describe this metaphysical thing that I was talking about, this mind, body, spirit connection. So in 2000, the summer of, I guess it would have been 2013, I watched Anthony Gormley's TED Talk on YouTube. And are you familiar with him at all?
I am, but
Yeah.
I've never seen his TED Talk, but I'm very familiar with
Oh my gosh. He talks about when he was about 4, that he would have to take a nap, and he remembers closing his eyes and thinking about his body. When you close your eyes, who are you? You know, are you your mind or are you your body? And so he talked about the body within and the body without. And I was like, thunderbolt, you know, this is exactly what I'm talking about, this metaphysical, existential thing of who am I and where am I in space. And so this was my first sculpture. It's coat hangers and picture framing wire and crochet thread. And I was so proud of myself that I was making something that was not a painting, but this depth of field of these connections is basically was a launching pad for me. So what do I have next? So at the same time, I was doing an Anthony Gormley experience where he basically creates these castings of himself, and he puts them in these museums in different shapes of his body doing different things. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it. And I documented myself. I paper mache'd my head and I paper mache'd my shoulder area. And then I switched all my classes to take more sculpture in the fall. And I created this casting. This is with the sand thing where you and I had to paraffin my casting. And I have such an appreciation for you working in metals, because this is my first attempt of learning how to do this. I had no idea how much work this was going to be to try to create an iron pour of myself. So worked very hard on that and realized, okay, if I'm not going to be in metal, but I'm going to do sculpture, what else can I think of? And it's still this metaphysical thing. And I reminded myself that I was watching a movie when I was a senior in high school, and it was called The Cube. So this is my cube. It was a Jim Henson film, I believe, and he had a guy in a glass cube that people would come in, and he was trying to explain to them how he was trying to get out, and his frustration of him trying to get out of this cube. So this is my Doho Su frame, where I'm creating these memory box out of this sheer fabric with PVC pipe. In the middle was a plexiglass wall, and on one side was a chair, another side was a table. So this frustration of not being able to marry the problem solving because you can't get to the solution. And so that's what this was about. And I look at this and I laugh at the clumsiness of me trying to figure out how to create something like this. But I think that that's also the part of great creative growth. And that's why I wanted to show this piece, is that sometimes we get so stymied by the sense of failure that we're afraid to try something new. So I'll just keep making a boat. I'll just keep doing the thing that I know how to do because I'm so comfortable there. And a lot of times I'll talk to artists and I'm like, yeah, I've been selling these still lifes and I guess I'm going to keep doing it. But you sense that there's something else you could be doing. So this is my attempt of failing and yet reaching a different plateau in my work. Of trying to figure out how to get to that next place. What do I have next? So after dealing with all the grinding in the metal pour, this is my mind over matter piece, because I was in such back agony that I was thinking still about, you know, in our head, what are we thinking about? And there's so many people with chronic pain that this piece is what came out of that, of, you know, how do you, when you've got something still inside your head that you're dealing with, what does that look like when you're trying to survive these energy chakras and all of this? So very delicate piece, not a very good sculpture because I was still learning how to do it. I learned at this time that not everything that you make, as much as you like it, is going to go the distance. This was fragile and delicate. And when I moved studios, it's no longer existence except for in photography. And I learned that it's okay to throw things away. It's okay to have them be impermanent in this particular piece. So my thesis show was about, I read a book called Gödel, Escher, Bach as I'm going through all these different things of these existential crises. And I recognized in this book, it was called Gödel, Escher, Bach, The Eternal Golden Braid. And he was comparing artificial intelligence versus the mind, and what's better at problem solving. And so I created my little cubes now. These are my little mind cubes. But what's different about the mind versus the computers, which we have created, their programming, is that we embed memories and we have emotional experiences that create those memories. So these are these different boxes that are taking emotional experiences and what would happen inside this little cube of your head. So that's what I did next, and I created a whole body of work around that. I think the thing that's the next thing that happens a lot of times when you get out of graduate school is what's next. I decided to go ahead and continue on that same vein with that book, which was about how do ideas take shape. This is my experience with girdle welding. That's what my professor called it, was brazing. So I was taking mild steel rods and basically, you know, heating them up and hot gluing them together with, what do you call it? Is it solder? Is that what you call it? The little white rods? Yeah. So still somehow I'm feeling as though I need to have this cloud metaphor, because that's how I view ideas, is like clouds, that they're very loose, but then they become more structured as they become more hardwired. So a lot of my work still has this geometric shape of how do ideas take shape. So that was my first thing that I did after graduate school. I was still working through Gödel Escher Bach, that the way that he describes it, if you're familiar with Gödel, he was a mathematician that was, he did the first theorem that all problems are not solvable. And so that's why he talked about him. The next person he talked about was Bach, which was how do you solve problems when you're talking about music? What is composers, what do they have to do in that creative process? Because it's a very mathematical process. And the other one was Escher. Are you familiar with the hand drawing the hand? Yeah, so that's what that is these problem-solving circular things. So I thought, well, I'll take a look at the musical component, that mathematical coding that happens. And that's what ended up happening in this piece, was the notes and trying to line them up to create these synergies between these dots. You know, still have a painting behind it. I'm still struggling with, am I a painter or am I a sculptor? I do a lot of wall relief work. This was my first chance to next work with Hambidge. Did you go to the Colony Square at all when they did that tear down?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't. I think I had work in the wall of drawings, but that I hadn't been a resident that year, so I didn't have anything in the big, you know, I didn't get one of the little Hive boxes.
Yes. Yeah. So I was in the Hive box with Midtown Players. And there was a gym, and this was their little office. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a cube. This is my chance to do my cube. So, you know, 2 sides glass, 2 sides mirrors, and taking a look at that one with all the indecision. So I hadn't done something like this before. I did a trial run in my studio. I'm so glad I did that, because I realized that the structure of yarn does not really want to be structured. So learning how to take a material that is very loose and learning how to make straight lines with it. So I think I had 14 days to work on this. I went in every day and worked as long as I could. And so it went up all the way into the tubing and all that kind of stuff. And it was a really great experience. I loved doing it. And I sought out a couple of other times of taking these rooms and being able to create these installations. I did a trial balloon. I just remembered I actually tried to use L-wire to string it. But unfortunately, L-wire is an LED wire. And if you wind it too tight, it breaks the little phosphorescent core. And so that was a fail. But, you know, that's the thing is sometimes about materials is learning what are their boundaries, what can you and can't you do with certain materials. So it was a trial. I think it lasted for a day. I think I got a few good pictures of it, and that's about it. I have a Vimeo of this, and in the Vimeo account, you can also see at the end, Fly on the Wall was a dance troupe that was inside of Midtown Players as well, and they wanted to see if they could dance inside my cube. So I have a Vimeo of, I didn't realize that what they wanted to do was basically like rip it down as they were dancing. So it's really cool. I got some great shots of the dancer trying to like get inside the web and do all these really cool motions and stuff. It was really very fun to photograph this dancer inside of it. So good experience. What did I do next? So going back small again, because you can't always do installation, now I'm taking music, and I wanted to see if I could take the dots of music and weave them to find out what our minds are doing inside. I didn't know the plexiglass would create these really beautiful shadows. So it was like a happy accident of like, I wasn't really going for shadows, but that's awesome that it made that. I think based on the way this one's looking, that I didn't have it laser etched. The ones that I've done since then are laser etched, and I put them in a wood channel. So it's got a wood core behind it. And then I weave jewelry wire and make these little constellations. So this is the first one that I did of that. The paintings are looking like this by now. So I'm taking all these connections and pathways. This is my frustration with actually trying to get a mortgage. So I kind of like this piece because it's called the dark web, because, you know, in that sense of self, I'm thinking, okay, now that we have the internet and we're so out there, are we a number? Am I just a number? Are all my numbers describing who I am at this point? The grid is newspaper articles of all the different companies that had been breached at the same time. And then all the little dark dots are basically probably me on the dark web of, you know, what have I become and how vulnerable really am I in this matrix of numbers that's kind of percolating through this piece. So I've done a lot of pieces like this where there's dots and lines. And for me, the lines are the connections and the dots are personal truths or moments of experience. In 2018, it was like my year of installation. I got to do a lot more. So I met Jeffrey Paclapan when we were looking at the Hive and how to do it. And we became good friends. And we had the opportunity to do a 2-person show at Chastain with Karen Lowe, the curator there. And she wanted us each to do an installation. So this is my installation. All my ideas are in the cloud, which for me is a double entendre of we think about a cloud. And when we say, yeah, it's in the cloud, well, it's, you know, it's basically a big supercomputer that's got all of our ideas. And so I'm looking at that versus, once again, the metaphor of clouds for me and how they're so fluid and elusive, and, you know, they're there and they're gone. But then, you know, what does that look like compared to the binary grid? And so you go into it, and the video went across this grid. And at this point, this is when I started reading Thinking Fast and Slow. And the way that the author describes it is that there's 2 grids or 2 ways of thinking that we think about stuff. System 1 is that binary yes, no construct of, you know I have to look both ways before I cross the street, or the rules of how we conduct ourselves. And system 2 is about how do we extrapolate that out to come up with new ideas and new ways of thinking. And so that's what I used to come up with this installation. And it was a really great experience. And right after we finished doing that, I went to Hambridge for my first time and worked on this prototype for the Beltline. Here I learned how to do a prototype. So it was these 4 pine 90-degree angles. And the idea about it that I presented to the Beltline was that Atlanta is a city of inclusivity, that the doors are always open, that, you know, that what makes us unique also makes us really fabulous when we work together as a team. So when you think about, you know, everybody's a different flavor, a different color, when you put it together, you make the rainbow. So the idea was that you had these intersects, and in the middle was pure thought. So if you looked up, there was a square and it had the white grid, and you could see the clouds going by. Unfortunately, didn't make it. I only got to prototype. I learned a lot about what it's like to apply for grants and how to look at finances. I worked with a friend of mine who actually does real sculpting to see if he could make these metal frames for me and how much that would cost. This also is only known on Vimeo. It's not in existence anymore. Throw it away. But I loved the weaving. For me is very meditative, and I like this process of sculpting. For me, it really works. I think it's something we all have to figure out, is what feels good when we're making it. You know, not everything, like I said, that I can't do iron as much as I can probably weaving. So did I do another? This was the last one, 2018. I did an installation at White Space in the White Spec. I was thinking a lot about lying and politics at that time. We were also talking about what's your version of the truth, which I just can't stand that phrase, because to that means is that now you have now taken something that's no longer true and you're still calling it a truth, where truths are supposed to be factual. And yet we're talking about what's your version. I'm like, now we're just telling lies. Now we're just lying to ourselves. And in looking at that, I discovered that actually lying is something that we do every day. We lie to ourselves in little baby ways and don't even realize that we're becoming to have our own truth. So that's what this was about. I learned about how to do a 4-day installation, thinking about materiality and all that, and trying to do this very, very quickly. I worked for this for 3 weeks off-site and then basically unfurled it on-site. Jeffrey actually helped me install this, and my other assistant was my son. And I basically just said, see what you can do to make it so that it no longer makes sense anymore that there's holes. So if you see the one on the right, there's kind of like it's been breached. And so the binary grid, the first one is the pure thought, and then the lie is the one that's on top that we tell ourselves. And these holes and these gaps in our system, like malware, start to take over. And I think that might be about it. Let's see. So this is what the work looks like now. You can see why I'm making lines is because when I'm doing my installations, I'm looking at lines and how they connect. And then this is what I'm working on now. It's a sculpture I'm trying to get off the grid. I'm trying to get off the wall. I don't know what it's going to look like in the end. I'm reading a book called The Jazz of Physics right now. It's a guy who was trying to write his dissertation, and he actually was a jazz musician at the same time. And he was getting so frustrated that until he went back to look at jazz and realized that improv and that creative process actually creates what he calls elegant solutions. And so the top circle, which is that cardboard piece, is actually going to be a diagram that John Coltrane, who loved the idea of the cosmos in physics. So then the notes are corresponding with vibrations of color. They kind of go down, and then my cloud is still there. So I hope it works. We'll see. But that's where I am now, and that will be for a one-person show in January at Georgia State.
Great.
Yeah, so that's, but it's, it's like, if you would have told me that this is what I was going to be making back when I graduated in 1987, I would have said, I don't think so. It doesn't even look familiar to where I started or what I thought I was going to be doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I'll stop my sharing, but that, unless you want to see anything again, but yeah, that's my story.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much. And I love the progression of how you went back and forth from painting to sculpture. Can you go back maybe 1 or 2 slides to the painting with the lines?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute now. Let me go back again how did I do that?
Yeah, that
what do you see now? This one?
Yeah. That was great. That really that's so funny, the word coalesce. I have a collaborative group for a special project, and we started using this word coalescence.
Yeah.
I can't wait to tell my friend. She was like, I don't know about that word.
Yeah, no, I a lot of times I look the words up to make sure that I'm actually making sense. Does that really resonate with what I'm actually talking about? And when you look it up, the word means that it's actually, I believe that it's starting to come together, that something is really, beginning to form.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
This is great, especially that one, I think when the images that really stood out to me were the white, where was that? Oh, at the white speck. Your white speck, and then when you went to the painting, I was like, wow, I could see such a connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that so being multidisciplinary for me, trying to, since when I started painting, I was basically painting from a source. So for me, actually making the real thing is so important, versus making the illusion of something. It's like, well, how do you, as an abstract artist, more conceptually, how do you make it unless you make it for real? So it's actually very important in my practice to be able to make this thing for real and then take a look at those patterns and then see if I can translate that into other mediums. Great. So that's what I found works for me the best.
Yeah, that's really great. Wonderful. Do you mind showing the white speck installation one more time?
Sure. There it is.
Oh yeah, that's really, really great. And so your son helped you with that as well.
Yes, complaining, but still, he actually did a really great job. I looked at it, I'm like, wow, the patterns that he came up with were really, really cool. So it came off the wall about 4 feet in, that it was really, really dense. I wanted it to be like a cocoon of like you're inside your own head of all these things. We had a good time doing it.
That's great. And did you have any dancers that interacted with this, or this was
I
really?
did not. I did a smaller version as a sculptor that also is no longer in existence, and it was at the DeForest Art Center, and I couldn't get it. It wouldn't fit in my car, and so I kept saying, I'll come back and get it another time. And I didn't, and I had a light board underneath it, so all of the white lines were kind of illuminated from the bottom, and there were musicians that were coming and practicing, and they used that as a backdrop. So I feel like there's still some potential where I could potentially get my work to be a backdrop on stage somehow, for people to either dance around or whatever. It just hasn't quite happened yet. Got to work on that.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just asking our Facebook audience if we have any questions, and I guess we can go back from the sharing. I mean,
Yeah.
you wanna
Okay.
share any
Yeah.
other- Did you want to feature any other pieces? Or?
No, that's what I got. There we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you. That was like a beautiful trip into your mind and your history as a sculptor and painter, multimedia artist, as they say. And how was that for you, going back and looking at all the work?
Oh, like I said, it's surprising that sometimes you just don't know where, if you just let it unfold, and I guess listen to serendipity a little bit and look at, take a chance sometimes on things, it might just work out, but you have to be able to also say, well, I'm going to give it a try and, see what the experience does for you, I guess is the way I looked at the work of, sometimes, like I said, the beginnings of the things that I was making wasn't always probably, the best work, and yet I learned a lot from that. Did you ever read the book, How to Steal Like an Artist?
No.
Okay, this is a really funny little book. I think I had it on my iPad at one point. And it basically talks about the creative process where you start out with this thing that you think is going to be really great. You're like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then as you go along, you're like, okay, it's a little harder than I thought. The graph is going down and you're like, oh. And then you get to what he called the dark night of the soul. You're at this, this core, dark night of, I don't think I'm gonna just, why did I ever think I was going to do this thing? This is terrible. This is going to suck. Why, and then you continue and you get through and you're like, okay, well, maybe I learned some things, and at the end, you're kind of back to where you were, wiser, a little bit more, cognizant of like, how would I use the materials? What would I have done differently? And I feel like that's what is always the process of creativity, is facing that there's going to be a V in there somewhere, the dark night. And that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I'm not so familiar with that book, but guess what? We do have a question. It's sort of a comment and a question. And it's from Ronald Bertrand. And he says that the creative process of abstraction gives him anxiety. Sometimes. Is that the same for you? Do you have anxiety in the process of creating abstract work, or do you have peace of mind inside of that? What's your experience?
I think that as you heard me talking, most of the things I'm doing, I'm reading about strategies in different books, whether it's behavioral economics or a professor they're basically mathematicians, and most of my work has that blend between the emotional, which is for me color, and then taking a look at what do those mathematical patterns look like and applying what they're saying. So I look at it as almost like a scientific inquiry. And so I'm trying to see like, well, did it work? I mean, even that one where I did all my ideas are in the cloud, I was taking a look at what Daniel Kahneman said. There's two constructs, there's system 1 and system 2. So I'm like, okay, I'll make system 1 and system 2. And did it work? And I'm like, holy cow, it did. It actually worked. I mean, what they were talking about of creating these different grids and then pulling off of it still made the yarn hold tight. And so I'm like, all right, it worked. So I guess that's why it's giving me the ability to be conceptual about things, because it's so grounded in theory. And like I said, scientific inquiry, I guess.
Right.
But otherwise, I mean, I never would have thought I could have been able to do something abstract because, well, what is it coming from? I think that's the most important part. If you're going to make something abstract, I guess there's people who did it, was it Dada, and they were doing the dream stuff of just like doing free loose doodles and just letting those doodles of the freeing of your mind and all of that. And, I don't know, some people feel still good about that. And so it depends upon where you are of what it is that you're trying to explore, I guess,
Yeah.
the way I see it. Yeah.
Wow, really? Yeah, I think in my own work, I've been striving for this place that's somewhere between abstraction, like
Mhm.
these abstract landscapes is what I've been thinking about lately. And sometimes it's like a landscape of the cosmos, and sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I kind of see behind you is like this thing,
yeah,
these, constellations in our head. And I think we're all connected. I think that's what I kept saying. Professors are looking at me like, okay, here comes this crazy woman. But I kept saying, no, but we're all connected. You know what I mean? Like these connections.
right.
It's like I had to go read a book to understand what it was that I was talking about.
Right. Well, to be able to speak about it in a way, right?
Totally, because it's really dense. I mean, I was looking for the God particle. I'm looking for the quarks and like trying to figure out this stuff. And I was reading about Terry Winters, who that's what he did, is that he started looking at these small particles that make up the larger body of who we are. And that's what he does, is he looks at vibrations and things like that. And so I look at a lot of his work and trying to figure out, because he has like they're kind of these graphs, these rhythms of things, and he lays them on top of each other, and they're really, really beautiful.
That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were having a solo show coming up at Georgia State. Medora Frey has a fabulous show. I went and looked at it the other day.
Did you see it? I haven't had a chance to go over. And
Oh,
which campus is she at? Is she downtown?
she's in the downtown campus? Yeah.
Downtown. So mine's going to be at Clarkston.
Oh,
So
okay.
not quite prime time, but close.
Now, who curates that gallery? Is that
Don Dugan.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think I was in a group show there with the Atlanta printmakers.
Yes, I've done a group show with them, and then I did the Women's Caucus for the Earth. Were you in that?
I wasn't in that one, no.
Yeah.
Technically, I was
That was like,
I was a speaker at the Women's Caucus for the Arts, the national one, kind of simultaneously.
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, in Chicago.
Oh, well, that's really exciting.
I've done a little bit of work with the National Caucus. I love the organization. The themes of the shows here haven't always been like lined up with like what I'm up to, at the moment.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It has to be. That one was about the Earth,
Yeah.
and the one that I put in was a piece called Moral Dilemma, which I feel like we're always right now in this middle of this moral dilemma of having to pick from these disparate things that we see. Okay, we've got dystopia on either side. How are we going to figure it out? And that's the thing of that piece was actually about the 2016 election, having to choose between these characters that you're like, why are they doing this to me? Why can't I pick who I really want? And you just have to pick. And that ugly process that we're going through yet again. So
yeah, exactly. I know. It's interesting. I was trying to set myself up to vote from what do you call it, like a absentee ballot, and
right.
in this one, so I was like double checking. They're like, well, we don't have a proof of you being a registered voter, and I was like, what? But it turned out
I got something in the mail yesterday about that, and I'm going to double check and make sure that
I know, double check because and then I went back. I think I had put a digit wrong in my driver's license number.
Okay.
But I was like feeling a little bit paranoid, and I was thinking last time, at the primary, I did early voting, but I was there for like 4 hours, and I saw
really,
and from other locations, and I was just like, God, I don't want to do that again. It's my birthday right around then too, so I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do, and I'm gonna be installing a show. I was like, I'm gonna do that paper ballot, but I've been like paranoid about the paper ballot. You know what I mean? The writing.
I know. That's what I'm worried about, is that they're going to somehow say that the mail-in votes didn't work or whatever. And then, so they have opened up a whole bunch of institutions between State Farm. I think I actually heard the Hive Museum is going to allow voting because they don't want that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
cool.
I voted for, it was a runoff election at State Farm, and I was like the only person there. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and early vote. I'll find some place. Sometimes they do it at the library. So I think that's what I'm going to do.
I used to go to the DeFore's Art Center.
Really?
I liked it because the art there was right around the corner from my studio. But
yeah,
some warehouse on the street where I buy steel now, which picked that up too. And so I thought, I don't know, maybe I also noticed when I was standing online, people wrote in their paper ballots and then they came and dropped them off.
I think that's another way of doing it. They have like some kind of a mailbox place.
Yeah, I kind of like that because then I feel like it's like in my hand. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like giving it to a person, and maybe I don't have to stand on that line. Although it was an interesting time standing on the line. It was sort of at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and I ran into people I knew.
That's interesting. I know you kind of make friends with people in line. You have like, we're doing this together,
I
you know.
know.
Yeah.
And you think like, oh, I'm here early in the morning and I'm at early voting, and then you're still there for 4 hours, you know, and I'm like,
Wow.
that was my
That's
whole day.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in a good way, it gives me a sense of ease because I want people to vote. So I'm glad to hear that there are people out there, because that's the
Yeah,
big thing is when people don't do it.
exactly. I
So,
know,
yeah.
right? I mean, look at how hard, you know, it's only been 100 years that women have had the right to vote.
I know. I think of that, you know.
And then
Yeah.
if you think about the civil rights movement, it's like a big
Mhm.
part of what people wanted was the ability to vote.
Right.
So, and now it's like, it seems like that's all at stake again.
I know. I agree. So yeah, it's interesting time. So
Yeah.
if I can ever get just a little bit political about some of these things and talk about some of our current state of mind, because I think that's the other thing about being connected is that, you know, individually we have connections, but we actually are connected, and that, like I said, we are all connected in the way that the groupthink starts to, you know, populate itself. So sometimes I can make work about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most political I've gotten with my work is the work where I transform guns. And,
Right, I remember those.
yeah.
Yes, yes, that
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah, and I have a piece from that body of work that's a 12-foot tall canvas, and it's all targets, and
Yeah.
it was purchased by an African American lawyer, and
Wow.
we're actually going to create a plaque that goes along with it and
Uh-huh.
create video, because she sees, you know, certain aspects. You know, I make work that has like an aspect of, I don't know that abstraction is always the right answer, but like a little bit of, you can come to it with your own, as opposed to like, here's the answer, right? Like, I
Right,
don't.
right, right. I
So
think
she,
that's good.
yeah, and so, you know, the piece, it's very much about the mass, you know, you know, like gun shootings, right? But it also has to do with racial profiling, you know, but she's really connected the racial profiling part. And so we've been formulating a plaque that will go along with it in her law office. You know,
Okay.
meanwhile, we have to install this thing with a crane because it's going up to the 3rd floor, and her building is like skinny, you know?
Oh,
So this Thursday we meet with the crane operator, and I've crane operated sculptures before. I mean, installed with cranes, but never a painting, you know? So I'm like,
yeah.
we should film this and make a video about it and interview you. And so now she's actually she's so moved by what's been happening with Breonna
Yeah.
and those cases. So she wants to actually dedicate it to all the women, all the African-American women that have been killed that don't even make it to the news. So,
Yes, I know. I know. Gosh, we still got work to do.
I know. Well, it's been so great speaking with you. We went over time just a little bit, but we were having a fun conversation.
Yeah, no, it was really great. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, like say, hey. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
So, well, what would your final words be that you'd like to share with our live audience? Or, oh, hi, Sandra. So, what would you like to leave our Facebook Live audience? Or
Yeah, I guess, you know, face your fears. Don't worry about failure. You know, take a bite size out of your idea. If you can't do the whole thing, that's okay. You know, just keep plugging away, and it's going to be okay. I think that, like I said, that self identity of, you know, thinking sometimes we have to be so perfect all the time, and just acknowledging that nobody's perfect and that we're all a work in progress, and our work is also a work in progress, and that's okay. That's
great.
That's where I'm going with that.
Well, thank you so much for being here on Connect and Create.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated getting to know your work a little more thoroughly. And I love the connections between your linear, do you say twine or string or?
Yeah, it's a yarn, or I use different kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Between your fibrous pieces and your paintings, I think that's really strong work. I could even see, you know, maybe pitched to one of those corporate offices to have a, you know, a little installation somewhere in there. Could really like.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah.
Mention dusting.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it was really great having you.
Thank
Those
you.
of you that are, yeah, those of you that are out there watching, if you have a story that you'd like to tell about your life as an artist, share a project that you're up to. This is really created for artists and entrepreneurs. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us today, Sabre. Your name is now changed.
Yes, I'm very exotic. Thank you.
Yes, and come back again next week. We have a couple of great speakers lined up. One coming in from New York, our good friend Mason Webb, who is an Atlanta artist, he's now in New York, he'll be speaking. Lacey Longino,
Yeah.
who's doing this huge mural, she'll be speaking. And I have a friend in the West Coast in California who's going to be speaking coming up as well. So really look forward to learning about other artists. And if you have something that you'd like to share, both artists and entrepreneurs, love to have you. Feel free to Facebook message me or message me on my website. And I'll just give one quick plug. Next week, next Wednesday, I start the Big Vision course. It's a course all about being kind of like the professional side of being an artist, as well as like digging into what are your big dreams, you know, what are your visions as an artist, and lining those up. So love to have you a part of that. We've got a number of people signed up, but it makes for a great community to have more people. So
Awesome.
if you're interested, reach out. And I can't thank you enough, Sabre,
Very good.
for being with us. And I'll say your name the opposite, the correct way eventually. Playing now. So it was so great to have you with us. And thanks again. And we'll see you all next week.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.